Hello and welcome to the Q&A session for our second webinar in round 2 of the NDIS Success Program. Our topic today are questions about understanding the market. First of all, Community Business Bureau acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia. We recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. Hello, my name is Andrew Ellis and I'm a business consultant at CBB. I'm joined here today by Jane Arnott, the General Manager Consulting and Business Services. Today we're going to be talking through questions that we've received in the last week on the subject of understanding the market since the most recent webinar has gone live. Thank you to those people who've submitted questions via Facebook, LinkedIn or email, and we'd also encourage you to share your own experiences of the NDIS on the CBB NDIS Success Forum Facebook group. To find this group on Facebook, search for CBB NDIS Success and you can share your stories and ask some questions there. Navigating the NDIS is challenging and requires a lot of learning, and hearing how other providers are dealing with it can be most valuable. Today we've grouped our questions into a few different themes. Firstly, we're going to talk about analysing market opportunities, given the topic at hand of understanding the market this week. We're also going to have a talk about competition, and then another key part of understanding the market is understanding current trends within the market. So we're going to talk about current market trends at the moment too. We did say on the webinar that we would give an update on the quarterly report statistics from the NDIS, but we're still waiting for that data as at the end of June to come out. We haven't got that just yet. So we might get into our questions now.
So Andrew, we know that there's a lot of underutilisation of NDIS plans, and people are saying they can see that in their area and a lot of unmet need. So how do people identify which service they should develop first?
I think it's a really good question and a challenging one for organisations to deal with when there are 5, 10, 20 different ways that they can look at growing. How do you narrow that down to what you're going to do in the short term, medium term, longer term, and which is the most attractive? I think if you spend some time going through the process that we outlined in the webinar, then you might come up with 5 or 10 different ideas or maybe more for growth options. And it might fall into one of these kinds of categories. It might be doing more for existing clients, so that's growing utilisation rates of the plans that you already and the people that you're already looking after. It might be providing a new service to existing clients. It might be providing services to new clients or doing new things for new clients. You could also have a think about what you do well as an organisation. So that's about what your assets are, what your strengths are, whether that's physical resources or relationships. It might be in established organisations that there are relationships that you have through other business units or departments within the organisation with people that you're providing different services to that have an NDIS plan, and that's a strength and that's an asset and a relationship that you can build off. So think about what those strengths are that you can build from and apply to that new service and play to your strengths on that. As you work through all these kinds of options, you can compare them based on which is easier or less risk to do, or even looking at those that have the greater return, whether that's in client numbers, client outcomes or revenue. And that will help you to be able to sort of rack and stack and prioritise those based on your appetite for investment and spend, given that it is a challenging time in the market right now. You can also have a look and see what local data you can find through the NDIS quarterly reports and other information available. State and territory government departments and local councils often have data that will help you to refine what your market size is. And if you talk to community organisations and other groups, that'll give you some real on-the-ground experience about what the need is in different places where you could grow. I think it's really important to focus, and I've been working with a couple of clients lately where we've talked about how many different pathways for growth that they have, and they're trying to narrow it down to say, well, what 2, 3, 4 things do we want to do right now? I think the challenge is if you're trying to do all things to all people, then you're probably doing nothing for everyone, and you need to get that focus there and then build off of the momentum from that. So pick your most attractive positions and then start from there. And I think webinar 3 that we've got coming up in a week's time will help you with service design. That will help a lot with, knowing how to develop that new service.
Yeah.
So our next question, round 1 of the NDIS Success Program is, the webinars have now been complete, and CBB is now supporting 8 different organisations with targeted consulting support. Without giving away all their different business models and plans and things like that, Jane, can you tell us some of the trends that we're seeing from those organisations in and the market opportunities that they're pursuing?
Yeah, so we've got 8 organisations that we're working with who completed the first round of these webinars. And as we get towards this round 2 that we're running at the moment, organisations can apply for that one-to-one support. And we're working with organisations with really different kind of geographic reach, different strategies, different specialisations. So there's not necessarily like a common theme that you'd see across all 8 organisations. But I think the work that you've talked about, Andrew, in the session about the ANSOFT matrix is a good way of looking at it. So we've got some that are looking to add new services to existing customers, perhaps as a different pathway to reach new people that are future customers. We've got those that are spreading their geographic reach, so maybe moving from metro to regional areas or moving from one regional area to another. And some that are perhaps working with a group of clients under community-based funding or something along those lines, so not specifically working under the NDIS at the moment, but they can see that a lot of the clients they're working with do have disabilities. So looking at actually is there different services that they can provide for those clients, but under the NDIS as well as the other ways they're working with them currently. So each organisation is quite unique, quite specific in terms of what they're doing, and we've got organisations that are working with Aboriginal communities, with people with mental health problems, people with intellectual disability, one organisation that's interested in early onset dementia, so a whole range of different types of issues that people are working with, but they've all come to the programme with a really kind of with a clear idea about the kind of things that they want to achieve.
Excellent.
And you had a client the other day who was interested in setting up a new service and wanted to find new customers. So where did you kind of direct them to?
That's a hard one. But that's a hard one for people who are starting out, I think, is to know where to get that first customer from, and the second and the third and so on. And I think that there is a lot of good data available from things like the NDIS quarterly report, which we've talked about a few times before. And other data also available. You can download an Excel form from the NDIS website, and I was looking at some of that just the other day, and you can get down quite specific details in terms of the number of people with an NDIS plan in one country town to another. So one of the examples I was looking at was the Eyre Peninsula, Port Lincoln type area here in South Australia. And you can drill down to not just how many people have an NDIS plan in Port Lincoln, but also in the regional communities or smaller towns around that region, and get a bit of an idea of where those participants are. So it won't necessarily, particularly as you get very specific, if you want to know how many people with a particular type of disability in a particular small town, it's going to be quite hard to find the precise number, and obviously data like that doesn't get released because it starts to get identifiable to the individuals, but you can extrapolate across different types of reports, percentages of this to those sorts of numbers to be able to help find where those people are likely to be. And then, from there, it's about using your marketing strategies. And we'll talk more about marketing in the 5th webinar in the series, and that'll help us to identify those customers more from there.
Yeah. Cool.
So,
sorry.
I get to ask you the next question. So, Jane, what holds organisations back from achieving their growth goals in new market areas?
So I'd say, there's a number of reasons. One is clearly resourcing. So, we've seen, I guess, too many times when the kind of growth objective is given to a busy manager or staff member, and they basically don't have the capacity to really kind of drive change. So putting a dedicated role in place or carving out some time for somebody to really work on it is really helpful. And we've seen one of our clients redeployed one of their managers to service development roles. So she's not just looking at the NDIS, but looking at different services that they can provide to their client group, different types of funding that might be available. And that's proved really successful. So they've recently secured funding for a new program as a result of putting some dedicated time in place. Obviously not everybody's going to be able to afford to do that, but it's important that the people you allocate to grow your services are actually able to take some time out from the day-to-day business to be able to do that. I guess the other thing is around investment. So, your first client isn't going to walk in the door instantly. You're going to have some upfront costs of building up that service before you start providing service. And particularly, for example, if you're looking to move into a new regional area or something like that, you need to have a presence in that area in order to attract your first clients. So there'll inevitably be like a little bit of upfront investment to build your service. And systems are another area that require investment. So particularly when you're looking to either establish, you need to get all your policies and procedures in place. And in webinar 4, we'll talk about some of the requirements that you need to have there for registration for the NDIS. But also if you're looking to grow, you might need to kind of update or increase the capacity of your IT systems to manage scale. So investing in systems is important. And we appreciate, that financial investment is particularly difficult at the moment as organisations are struggling with COVID-19, but the likelihood is that you'll need to put some investment in. And I guess the big thing that we've really seen over the years that we've been working in this space is the importance of good leadership and governance. So developing a new service or moving into a new model of operating requires commitment, and you need to make some difficult decisions, you need to be able to drive change through, potentially stop doing something that you currently do, potentially have some cultural changes in the organisation as well. And that can all attract a lot of internal resistance within organisations. So you need that leadership and the board to be supportive, to be kind of setting the vision for the future and the agenda for the future, and to really be on board in terms of making and following through those kind of key decisions.
That's good.
So competition, if we move on to the next section. So, a number of organisations ask us, they don't really understand who all the competitors are for their business. So where do people start to research that?
I think one place that you can start is with that internet browser on your computer or on your mobile phone and Googling for similar types of service to what you provide and similar locations to where you're based, and just see who comes up. I think that's a good starting place. It certainly will show what the search algorithms see is going to be who your competitors are. You could look at the NDIS list of providers for similar or same registration groups in your locations. But you're going to find that there's quite a lot of names on that list, and some organisations register for more things than they're actually active in, and so that might not necessarily be the most precise. But I think talk to other people. If you have a customer or a new customer, where did they go previously to get similar sorts of services? You could talk to friends or peers that you have within the industry. If you're part of a professional body, then you can engage with or peak body for your type of service. Then you can engage with them through your local networks, and you're likely to come across potential competitors or collaborators that way. And I think if you're more than a sole trader, if you've got people working for you, you could ask your staff, because quite likely that someone on your staff has worked for a competitor before and has come to your organisation from there. So all of those are different ways that you could start by helping to identify who those competitors are.
Yeah. And for small local provider, I mean, we've seen this quite a bit over the last few years, that maybe, people might have been providing service in a regional area for a really long time, and then some of the bigger providers start moving in, and those small local providers are often concerned about, the competition for clients, but also the competition for staff. So what can small local providers do to protect their business from competition?
Good question. I think it might even sound a bit cliche, but really the most important thing you can do to retain your clients is to do a good job of your existing services that you're doing for them. And if you do that really, really well, then they won't even think about going somewhere else. You might find benefit in doing a customer survey, and that'll help you to look for opportunities for how you can improve even further. And it's important probably to understand what the bigger agencies are offering and how they are different or better than what you're doing at this point in time, and a competitor analysis can help you to be able to do that. If clients are price sensitive and the bigger agencies are undercutting, then you may want to have a look at the prices that you are offering. But I think first of all, it would come to customer relationship before automatically going to price. Please stay tuned through all these webinars, and when we get to webinar number 5, we're going to be talking more about marketing strategies, and I think that will really be quite helpful, and will help you to be able to put in place your own clear point of difference, rather than just copying what competitors are doing. Understand what it is that's made your organisation unique and strong and performed so well for so many years, and build on that rather than trying to copy somebody else.
And I think the same applies to kind of keeping employees as well. So how do you demonstrate to your employees that you're a better place to work? That a lot of that will be about your culture, but also what benefits or other health and well-being aspects might be important to them. Do they get better experience by working for a smaller agency where their managers know them well and they've got those established relationships? So really just thinking about what your employees value in working with you as well.
Ultimately, it's a people business, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The whole model. So that relationship between your client and your employee can be just so important. Yeah. We're going to move on and talk on our next topic now about current market trends. So Jane, we've had the NDIS for a number of years now. I think across some regions in Australia, we're up to 6 or 7 years or thereabouts with the NDIS. So has it reached maturity, or are we still growing?
So it's definitely heading towards maturity. I mean, it's across the country. There's still strong growth. So the data for the January to March quarter 2020 showed that the number of participants in that 3 months grew by about 27,000. So that's people coming into the scheme. And there's now over 360,000 participants, but the estimate is that we'll get to 460,000 ultimately. So there's still kind of 100,000 people due to come into the scheme. So, you've got increasing volume of people coming in, but as we've talked about, the utilisation levels are still low. So they're still tracking below 70%. So that's, 30% plus of plans that are not being used. So of, funds that are in the system to be spent on services that aren't currently being purchased. So, and those numbers are even higher in regional and remote areas. So there's definitely opportunity for further growth within businesses, and we've seen, a number of our clients grow quite significantly over the last few years as a result of the NDIS. So if we look at growth, Andrew, which areas are we seeing growing faster than others and creating opportunities?
I think one that's really stood out to me as I've looked at the data in the last few quarters has been plan management. And that's been really quite fast growing. I think if you go back to the early days of the NDIS, it was just kind of a third, that a third people were plan managed, a third were self-managed, and a third were agency managed. But within those segments, the plan management has really been growing much faster than that. So again, from the March 2020 quarters data, 43% of new NDIS plans had plan management. And that's an increase from the 35% of plans in place before that quarter that had plan management, growing up to about 38% by the end of that quarter. And similarly, there's been a decline in the NDIS agency managed plans, dropping from 35 to 32%. Also seeing an increase in the number of people accessing support coordination. So 42% of plans in the March quarter had support coordination, lifting it from 38% to 39% of overall plans. And those trends are likely a reflection of the low utilisation rates as people renew their plans or become more familiar with the system, and they're choosing to seek assistance in managing the NDIS plan with the help of support coordination and plan management. Other growth areas can be seen through the perspective of where staff and talent are difficult to attract. And I think early in the NDIS rollout, occupational therapy was definitely one of those areas. And there's been a significant area of growth and a challenge to attract talent in that area. And my understanding is that has continued. But I think developmental educators, behaviour support practitioners now are especially in high demand.
Yeah.
And we expect the demand for services is going to change as the NDIS matures. People who've transitioned to the NDIS from state and territory disability funding tended to stick with their existing providers for this first plan and have branched out for subsequent plans. We know that plan utilisation increases the longer that someone has a plan. So new models of service provision such as Hire Up and Mabel, where people can select their own worker, have absolutely been popular. And we think that the kinds of services people will buy will change as they exercise more choice and control, potentially to more personalised and individualised services into the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what other trends are moving or changing the market at the moment? Obviously, we've seen COVID-19 has had a huge impact, and we don't want to beat that drum again today. We've talked a bit about that in the last Q&A session, but apart from that, what other trends do you think we're seeing in the market at the moment?
I think we talked last time about, as you say, about COVID-19 changing some of the ways that people operate and moving to more online. I think we'll continue to see some of those changes roll out in different ways. So I think it's always worth looking at what's happening in aged care, because obviously with the massive issues with the incidence of COVID-19 in Victoria, in aged care facilities, we're seeing states and territories look at provisions like not having casual workforce working in more than one aged care facility at a time. So it'll be interesting to see how that, or if that rolls through to disability, because certainly there's starting to be some talk around the risks within the disability sector being similar to some of those in aged care. So I think just thinking about how you resource your work, whether your employees are working at multiple different facilities will be an important thing to monitor going forward. And then the other things that, obviously are COVID related around things like travel restrictions, probably moving to more and more online training for staff, and those kind of things that will I think continue to run through. We also talked a little bit last time about Royal Commissions. So again, seeing what comes out of the Royal Commission, seeing what comes out of the inquiries into the death of Anne-Marie Smith in South Australia, in terms of what that means for regulation going forward. And we'll be talking more about the regulatory issues in webinar 4. I think the other one is a more general one, perhaps, in terms of the cybersecurity issues. So we've just been through, government raising concerns about cyber attacks, around keeping yourself safe from kind of hacking and scams. So Scam Awareness Week recently. And we know that, organisations such as not-for-profits, disability service providers that hold a lot of personal information on people are a right target for cyber attacks. I think people think that, they're doing good things within the community, so they won't be targeted, but actually that personal information you hold is a real resource that people want to get to. So, right for identity theft type attacks. So, so I think that's something that we're going to need to monitor going forward as well.
Excellent. Well, I think that gets us to the end of the questions that we've got for today. So thank you for tuning in and for watching us. We encourage you to use the opportunity to post a question on the CBB Success page on Facebook, or email us if you found anything unclear. And to find that group on Facebook, once again, just search for CBB NDIS Success. Our next webinar is on service design, and that's going to be available on the 1st of September. And then a week later, we've got the Q&A session for that on the 8th of September. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Cheers.